Hello, everyone, and welcome to Identifying Your High Opportunity Students with a Getting to Know You survey. This session is part of our Humanizing Online Teaching and Learning, a fall into Humanized Online Teaching and Learning, a pathway to equity. We have a series of live sessions that are occurring every other Friday throughout the fall. The last one is on November 19th. So if you want to jump in, you're certainly welcome to do so at any point, attend a la carte, view the archives, it's up to you. We also have a small group of folks who are here with us today who are enrolled in a course for a digital badge that they'll be earning. So I want to welcome all of them who are doing hard work and creating their humanizing elements along the way. I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock. I'm faculty mentor for CVC and @ONE. I work at the state level in the California Community College system. And we are really anchoring our sessions in equity and untangling what equity means. In our last session, we focused on looking at equity gaps, racial and ethnic equity gaps that exist in our face-to-face classes well before COVID. And we considered how online learning exacerbates those gaps. That's not just in our system, that's a national trend. And one of the things we're really critically becoming aware of is how an online class lacks many of the verbal and nonverbal cues that the human brain looks for when they're in a state of trauma or stress. And that was a thread from our earlier session with Dr. Mays Imad that I hope will really kind of serve as a helpful foundation for our session here today. Everything about humanizing serves humans. Everything about humanizing serves humans. It makes things difficult in some ways, or I should say more difficult in some ways for us as the instructors, for those of you who are in a teaching role, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So I want to really center you and keep you at the heart of what we're doing. And we're going to make that happen in our warm-up today. We're going to do a little mindfulness practice. And then we'll move into the lean-in phase of our session, which will be the presentation about identifying your high opportunity students with a Getting to Know You survey. Have another typo on this page. I did this last time too. This is my humanizing effort, I guess. So your hands-on activity will not be to create a humanizing homepage. That was from last time. Your hands-on activity will be to create a Getting to Know You survey in your course. So we want to encourage all of you to have one of your courses open when we get to that phase. I will show a quick demo of how to do it, and then we'll be moving to some smaller rooms if that serves you to work on that on your own. And then we'll come back into the main room here for a discussion, which we're referring to as the cool down. Okay, so for our, let me just check everything and be sure we're still good here. Okay, I don't see any red flags anywhere. For our warm-up today, we're going to think about a question. We're going to get started with the question. How are you? That's a question that is so baked into our cultural communication protocol, at least for me, that it seems to roll off my tongue without even leaving space for a response, a mindful response other than good, or even expecting a response sometime. So in some ways, this question kind of loses its power. It's like it has well intentions, but then we don't really allow it to serve in the way that perhaps it should serve. And maybe there's a reason we do that. Maybe that's because our cultural conventions also want that stuff to be left aside, and we want everything to be good, right? But if you change that question slightly by adding, if you change that question slightly by adding one word, the word today, the question shifts and it becomes a specific question about how you're feeling at this point in time. And by adding that reference, it helps us to recognize something really valuable. It helps us to recognize that our state of being is different day to day. And we could also say minute to minute or hour by hour, depending on what it is that we're grappling with. And we all know how it feels when we get that call that changes everything. Or just a call that disrupts your day, right? Those instant reminders how quickly things can change. After COVID began, many of the certainties in my life, let me say that again. When COVID began, I began to notice that a lot of the certainties in my life were derailed. And that rise in uncertainty really created more stress in my life. And again, this was part of Dr. Imad's presentation earlier. And I know that some of us have been reflecting on that now since earlier this morning. And I started to use this question as part of my own daily practice. And what I did was I started to ask myself this question every single morning. Every single morning, I would wake up and ask myself, how are you today? And by doing that, it allowed me to have this quiet time to check in with myself and give myself time to respond to that question. Not so much in word. I didn't do it in words. I didn't do it in writing. Some people really like to welcome that into their practice, but I just did it quietly and reflecting and getting in tune with how I was feeling in my body. By doing that, I noticed that every day was different. And it allowed me to recognize that I kind of started thinking about myself as a glass or a cup. And that cup is always filled with stuff that I have to do that day, right? We've got the stuff we put on our calendar or other people put on our calendar. And all of that stuff lays in addition to what's happening in our lives. And everything, whether it be our personal lives or professional lives, carries a different emotional weight. For example, when I have these sessions on Fridays, I look at the days leading up to it, and I know that I need to clear my calendar, not just because I'm creating slides, but because I'm in here thinking, ensuring that everything is making sense. And I think I'm no longer in a full-time teaching role, or I am in a part-time teaching role. I don't want to minimize part-time teaching because there's so many other stressors that go on top of that. But teaching multiple classes is stressful. There's a lot to negotiate. And now that we're in this time of, design for online, design for face-to-face, design for everything at one time and facilitate it all, it's a lot. So I think it's really important for us to think about ourselves as a glass and to recognize that every day when we wake up, that glass may be more full than it was the day before, or maybe more empty than the day before. And then take that knowledge and move forward with it into your day. Give yourself grace. Think about, if there's that email that's going to be hard to answer, can you wait until tomorrow and answer it then? Or a couple days later? Use that to help negotiate your days. And that's been really helpful for me. And I hope that it will be helpful for you too. And one of the things that I've done is start to pull this into my teaching practice by asking that question of my students and encouraging them to also ask that of themselves. And I think that that's one way that we can bring in this care, this centering humanity, as Dr. Mays Imad put it earlier today, into our teaching. This could be done by creating, recording a brief video of just kind of a synopsis of what, I just said and connecting it to your life, but sharing it with your students. And I guarantee that the students who need to hear that are going to watch it and feel it and appreciate that. So we're going to take 2 minutes now. And I'm just going to be quiet for 2 minutes and invite you to reflect on this question. How are you today? Okay. And some of you have shared in the chat. If there's anyone else who'd like to contribute any thoughts at all or emojis in the chat, feel free to do that. And I'll give you a little tip. If you can't get emojis to work in the Zoom chat, if you upgrade Zoom, you can actually make a smiley face and we'll convert it into a smiley face. Or you can go to a website called emojipedia.com, emojipedia.com, and find an emoji there. And then it's really easy to copy and paste it anywhere else in your course, in Zoom. I like to use emojis in my course at the start of my subject line, sometimes to call out an assignment or something important. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, for sharing. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. I also wanted to let you know that we do look at the feedback that you share. At the end of every one of these sessions, you'll see a screen open with just two really simple questions. We ask you to rate our session from 1 to 5 and let us know what influenced your rating, and that's it. And we've gotten some great feedback. So I wanted to just share some of the themes that came out from last time. We saw a lot of appreciation for the research-based practices that we're looking at, for the emphasis on practicality instead of just theory, which is something that we often see, and also specifically related to online, right? A lot of times in conversations about equity and teaching and learning, we're focusing on the classroom, or if not the classroom, we're focusing on synchronicity. And so we're really here focusing on asynchronous online courses, but as we know the way teaching works, once you learn something and you like it and you accept it into your practice, it takes its shape in different ways, and modality no longer is so critical. But that is the point that we're starting at here. We have a lot of folks who have said they really appreciated having time in the session to get some work done, to make something in Canvas, and also an appreciation for the shared knowledge in the room. So I don't just want to say the knowledge of the speakers. It was really about everyone in the room contributing their ideas and their resources. And so that's one of the reasons why we lean so heavily on this chat. And we want to encourage you to share in the chat and also contribute later, because I know even last time there were things that I walked away from that, I didn't know how to do things in Canvas, and that was super helpful. Some of the thorns, we want to acknowledge we had a breakout room snafu last time. I'm not going to get into the complexities unless you're interested and want to ask me if you're someone who uses Zoom, but it had to do with Zoom webinar and me being in the wrong account. And anyway, so we had a snafu. We've kicked the tires. We've figured it out, I hope, unless I've made a mistake somewhere along the lines. And we also heard from some of you that you were struggling if you were a beginner. And so we're kind of grappling with trying to create a space that acknowledges the different range of technological expertise when we get to the hands-on. It's really difficult because we had some folks saying, I really liked the quiet work time. And we had other people saying, I wanted a demo during that work time. So we're trying to figure that out. And so we have a different approach that we'll be using today. So some themes from our earlier sessions that I'm going to just quickly touch on to kind of remind us where we've been. We've been looking at the social psychology of learning and really thinking about applying that to the online environments. So some of the concepts that have been raised are the concepts of stereotype threat, which goes back to Dr. Claude Steele's opening session in our series, imposter syndrome, and belongingness uncertainty. These are phenomena that apply to everyone. They apply to everyone. But we know from research that individuals are from minoritized groups, from non-dominant identities, and identity is intersectional. And I want to acknowledge that too. It always gets hard when we talk about identity, right? But we see that these concepts do disproportionately impact some folks more than others. And we want to keep that in mind when we're looking at those equity gaps and understanding what we can do to look at those gaps as opportunities to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to thrive in their higher education experiences. And so to close equity gaps, we must intentionally design and teach psychologically and socially inclusive online courses. Doing so requires knowledge of social psychology and learning, as well as digital fluencies about things like Canvas and Google Sites and different tools that we're introducing, recording videos. And most college educators don't have all of those skills. So we're turning to professional development as a space to really help fill that gap. And that's why we're here today. And in that context, we want to think about a course as a social experience that unfolds over time. And like all social experiences, the beginning is fraught with threats and anxieties. And this is what we refer to as a high opportunity zone. In our previous sessions, you were introduced to 3 humanizing elements that function in this high opportunity zone: the liquid syllabus, a humanized course card, and a humanized homepage. And today we're looking at a getting to know you survey. We're thinking about these elements as micro affirmations or kindness cues of social inclusion. Which is a phrase used in the research of Mika Estrada, who looks at creating belonging in STEM, particularly for people of color and women who are most likely to leave STEM majors in college. They are small gestures that send cues of identity safety, and they're like marbles in our students' metaphorical jar of trust. So we want to keep that metaphor in mind. These visual metaphors, the more we can use them in our teaching, that's an example of culturally responsive teaching. So if you find these kinds of concepts sticking with you when there is something visual associated with them, I want to encourage you to employ that in your teaching as well. And I wanted to share some of the fantastic examples that are coming out of our digital badge cohort for this series. These are some of our participants and their liquid syllabi that they have submitted as one of their required assignments to earn the digital badge. I love how different they all look, and that variety is really a reflection of the creativity that we bring to our teaching. And we had some really interesting and mindful humanized course cards selected for different disciplines as well. And some reflections along with those image selections that really showed thinking critically about who our students are, who we generally see included in those who become the majors in our disciplines, and who is not at the table, and thinking about the subtle cue as a way to send a cue of inclusion to those who are often not included. And then humanized homepages, here are a few examples also. Again, the variety, the difference, the creativity is really, really beautiful. And I find that, it takes so much time to do this. I want to acknowledge that. And when faculty have something that they've created that they feel good about, it really kind of changes the dynamic with an online course, because you do really want to welcome your students into it when it's a space that you feel really proud of. And in that context, this graphic is our reminder about belonging. The 8 humanized elements that we're focusing on are small and necessary gestures of kindness that send cues of social belonging by using inclusive language like we're using in our liquid syllabus. Having a syllabus that opens easily on a mobile phone and doesn't take students to a login screen, including images of students from marginalized groups, clearly laying out what we want students to do to be successful in week 1. We're demystifying what we mean by success. We're taking away those uncertainties. We're giving cues of structure for students before a class starts. By positioning ourselves as a partner in their learning instead of the gatekeeper of a grade, we're sending those cues of inclusion. And this is important because we're creating trust and identity safety before students get to our class. We're going to dig into that a little bit more, because our goal is to have students enter our class in a place where they're ready to learn, to diffuse these stressors that are at play in their lives and ensure that they feel that they're in an environment where they can be their authentic selves. And instead, we often have students who are coming into our classes feeling like they need to be something different. And that is not a humanized experience. That is not fitting in. And we know that in online classes where feelings of social isolation can be worse, we have to be more intentional in our online teaching about how it influences our students, and it can feel harder to center them in our teaching. Because when we teach online, it's so very easy to simply relate to students as a list of names on a screen, right? This veil of anonymity in an online class is not our pathway to equity. It's a barrier for many reasons. As Dr. Donna Ford has said, the less we know about a person, the more we make up. Teaching in a veil of anonymity means we are influenced by our unconscious biases. We're more likely to be. And those are often very much shaped by stereotypes. Stereotypes fuel deficit-based thinking about our students. They make us come to unfair and inaccurate assumptions about their abilities. They also influence who we interact with and who we don't. They dehumanize our students. Stereotypes privilege some and marginalize others. Really interesting 2018 study out of Stanford confirmed race and gender bias in an online class when it was found that that instructors were 94% more likely. Let me say that again. In an online class, instructors were 94% more likely to respond to discussion forum posts made by students that they perceived to be white males. And I have a link to that study that I'm going to put in the chat in case anybody wants to look at that. Under the veil of anonymity, fear reigns, cheating breeds, and bias flourishes. No meaningful or transformative life experience happens here. And that can be changed because we know that our students aren't just names on a screen. Behind every name is a rich array, a complex story that a student is bringing into our class. And the more we can start to relate to our students about where they are in life, understand where they've been, and see where they're going, and connect those experiences with what we're doing in our classes, that's an environment that is responsive to the diversity that our students are bringing into our class. And that's an environment where more students can feel human and feel like they belong. But as we also know, our students, just like we do, bring these narratives, these unconscious, invisible narratives into what they're doing. And these are things that we can support and diffuse based on what we're doing. So creating an inclusive culture, creating identity, safety, these are all things that can help to diffuse these mindsets, these personal narratives. Also things like growth mindset, which we'll look at a little bit more in a future session, and warm demander pedagogy, which we'll be emphasizing in our next session in this series. And basically, this is hard, and I want to acknowledge this. And I think that I'm hearing Dr. Ahmad's messaging from our earlier session that we need to take care of ourselves. So I want to recognize that lifting the veil of anonymity in an online class is not easy. In fact, it actually makes teaching harder because it requires us to take off our emotional armor and be vulnerable. And as you continue to humanize, you will become more intimately familiar with the emotional armor that you use, because everybody does it, right? We armor up in the face of vulnerability. And that's a phrase that Brene Brown uses. Her research about vulnerability has shown that Vulnerability usually looks like perfection or the all-knower, if you feel yourself slipping into either of those categories. And the sense of self-awareness is really helpful because when we find ourselves battling that desire to be perfect, we have to embrace our imperfections. And it sounds easy, but it's super hard, professors, especially when you're in the role of an instructor. And know that when you do, you're creating an authentic you in your online class that will be more relatable to your students. So keep that in mind. Don't strive for always being perfect in those pictures and in those videos of yourself. It's okay to make mistakes and keep that at the center of what we're doing. That's something that I put in my syllabus, that my students can expect me to make mistakes. I am human. So vulnerability is hard and we have been conditioned to run away from it, but leaning into vulnerability is our pathway to human connection. It's a two-way street. If we aren't there in it with our students, they aren't going to lean in to what we want them to do. And I want to share a quote here by the amazing Gloria Ladson-Billings, who is a leader in culturally relevant teaching. And it says, culturally relevant teachers envision their students as being filled with possibilities. They imagine that somewhere in the classroom is the next Nobel laureate, a Toni Morrison, the next neurosurgeon, a Benjamin Carson, or the next pioneer for social justice, a Fannie Lou Hamer. The perspective moves the teachers from a position of sympathy, quote, you poor dear, unquote, to one of informed empathy. This informed empathy requires the teacher to feel with the students rather than feel for them. Feeling with students builds a sense of solidarity between the teacher and the students, but does not excuse students from working hard in pursuit of excellence. And I really want to underscore that part. I should have emphasized that as well. So we need to be informed. We need to know who our students are, which is harder to do online, or at least the illusion is there that it's harder. Sometimes I feel like it's actually easier because we have more direct interaction available to us with our students. But this does not excuse our students from working hard in pursuit of excellence. The point is that we're bringing in that empathy with the challenge, with the high standards. We're not letting the challenge and the high standards go. It's the empathy, it's that instructor to student relationship that gets established and built upon for us to be able to do that, be that warm demander. And I'm not going to dig into this image. I was going to, but I think I'm a little tight on time. I want you to go back and look at it. It might be one that you've seen before. It's from Grammarly, and I absolutely love it. Sometimes we confuse sympathy and empathy, and they're very different, right? Empathy is relational. It is about leaning in. It is about seeing things through the eyes of our students to the best that we can. And there's always limitations, right? We really can't ever feel what it feels like, if, especially when we have identity differences. But it is important to take time to reflect on the difference between sympathy and empathy. And I hope that you'll look at this image and take note of the differences. By the way, you should have a link to the slides in the chat. I didn't see, but I'm sure Helen did share those with you. So please open those on your end. If you see something that you want to loop back to, these are very much intended to be for your reference later as well. So when we turn to the research about culturally relevant teaching and culturally responsive teaching, including the research of Gloria Ladson-Billings, Laura Rendon, J. Luke Wood, and Frank Harris III, and others, we see these themes emerging about trust, validation, and care. Again, relationships are important for all humans in higher education, as well as in K-12. After graduation, we remember the professors who pushed us, who saw something in us, and who challenged us to do something that we didn't think we were capable of, to help us grow and overcome those barriers that we may set for ourselves. That's what this is about, and being sure that everyone has that opportunity Okay. We can also look at other more recent research and see that having an instructor who cares is actually linked with higher grades in online community college courses. That's a study by Jaggers and Zhu from 2016. I think that that's really valuable to keep in mind. Sorry, I keep hitting the wrong key in my keyboard. So again, this context, that high opportunity zone, and we're going to now move forward with the Getting to Know You survey. A survey is a really simple way that you can include a cue in the first beginning portion of your class right after students come in, they've entered on your Humanizing homepage, they've clicked the Start Here button. And one of the first things you want to have them do is complete a survey that you tell them is only for your eyes. Their responses will only be seen by you. And you're asking these questions so that you can understand how to best support them. We have a sample survey in the Canvas Commons that we're going to have you download, import into your course if you'd like. Some of those questions are, what would you like me to call you? I will leave feedback in video format for you, which is another humanizing tip, by the way. Does that work for you? Leaving that as a question and having students say, yeah, it sounds great. No, thanks. I prefer written feedback. That allows our students to really guide what their needs are. And I often have had professors come to me and say, well, I can't ask that question because I don't know if my students need the captioning, right? And that's not readily available inside of Canvas, depending on the tools that I have available to me. And so asking this question up front is a great one to get to understand if that's something that will work for your students on their end. These last two questions have been really helpful to me. In one word, describe how you're feeling about this class. I find that in those responses, I am able to see themes. And there's really kind of like two ends of the spectrum. There's the I'm good, fine, excited. And then there's the anxious, overwhelmed, nervous end. And those are the students that get video feedback from me in response to that survey. I say, I see you, I see you're feeling overwhelmed. And based upon this other question, please share one thing that may interfere with your success in this class. I have students who tell me all kinds of things. Just last spring, I had a student who started my class, and I use VoiceThread in my class so that students respond in voice or video regularly. And she said, I'm having jaw surgery in week 12, and my jaw's going to be screwed shut for several weeks, right? So that allowed me to have a really meaningful conversation with her, and she was so grateful, right? I said, don't worry about that. You have the option to leave written comments, and that's absolutely fine. So that is something that's an example of how this works. And I know that you're thinking, how can I do this with all my students? And I feel you. And I think what we're trying to get you to think about here is that it's not all or nothing. It's very much about thinking about our students falling into different categories and you bringing what you can to that situation. So I'll get back to that in a second. When you set up your survey, you'll want to customize your questions. If you bring in our sample one, you can change anything you want. You can delete some, you can add others. You want to be sure that you let students know only you will see their responses and that you're using the responses to support them. Keep it concise as possible. No more than 10 questions, less if you can get to that point. Get rich data. Include at least 4 open-ended questions. So students do have to reflect and bring their own thoughts and experiences to the response instead of picking something that you have asked them to pick from. And we encourage you to set it as a graded survey in Canvas. Doing that allows students to earn a few points right off the bat, which is a great way to get experience with taking a quiz in Canvas, because surveys in Canvas use the same quiz interface, and also builds that confidence right off the bat. And then we like to think about encouraging you to think about adapting your teaching. So based on students' needs, adapt your teaching. Those who really need the high touch, Try to take your time and energy when you have it available and focus it on them. I think about this as like if you're walking out into a garden and you have one can of water and you've got plants in front of you, you're not going to give every plant the same amount of water, right? You're going to distribute the water differently and give more to the ones who need more. So that's if that's a metaphor that helps, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Also in the Canvas area, enable the notes field. If you didn't know that was there, it's super helpful because those notes are only visible to you. Jot down key things you learn about your students from the survey, right? It becomes this little tracking device that sits right there in the grades area. You can write down, for example, overwhelmed, working hours or extra hours to support parents. And that's something that I've heard a lot, and I'm sure you have too if you've been inquiring through COVID. Track students' login dates and assignment submissions in Canvas and reach out before it's too late. When you reach out, right, be intrusive. Reach out because you care. Use caring subject lines like, Carla, are things okay on your end? As opposed to missing assignment. Think about the words that you're using because they really matter. And as I mentioned, for extra humanizing during your course, thinking about your students, and if you've had someone fall off and trying to get back on track, use the video, the media recording tool in the Canvas Speed Grader to deliver feedback to them, assuming that they have said that the video feedback was okay, right? And this is just a clip from a interaction I had with a colleague in a professional development experience. So that's how the video feedback appears with some interactions below it. Now, how do we be race conscious as we adapt our teaching? I just want to touch on this quickly. There's a lot of research out there that shows that our Black students, particularly Black males, will not reveal things in a survey up front. And I want you to think about what we're asking our students to do. When we ask our students to share something important, something personal with them, they're taking a huge leap of trust and assuming that you're going to keep it confidential and that it is going to be used in the way that you have suggested it would be used, right? And some students aren't ready to make that leap yet. So that's another reason why this is harder, right? Don't take those responses in this survey at face value. Keep this in mind. And this is, I think, how race conscious teaching works, is because you keep this knowledge in your back pocket as you move forward. And as you start to see your students and as you start to get to know them. And I love this quote by Charles Feldman: trust is taking something important to you and making it vulnerable to another person. And we ask our students to do that in classes at the very outset. And if we're in it with them, if we too are being vulnerable and it's that relational process, that's how we're going to establish trust, and our students will lean in more. So just a slide to note some of the classroom bias that our Black and Latino and students of color are bringing into our classroom, thinking about their past experiences. And much of the research that points to the racial discrimination that occurs, that influences the type of instruction that white students get versus students of color. As well as more, we know that Black males are 3 times more likely and Latino males are 1.4 times more likely to be expelled than white males. There's a lot of research out there about this. And if you want to learn more, I would encourage you to turn to the research of Dr. Wood and Harris that have really been exceptional scholars in this field, and I've learned a lot from. So keeping that in mind, when it comes to men of color, interactions with faculty are a key determinant of success. They're critical, but some won't respond enthusiastically to initial support efforts. Some may be skeptical to solicited support from faculty because they've never experienced or observed it in prior experiences. Others may be embarrassed or ashamed because accepting support entails admitting that they need help to be successful. And that's all wrapped in with identity. So what to do initiate the first interaction, avoid the approach me first stance, which is often how we position help in our classes, create meaningful and intentional interactions with students that should be prioritized, and be persistent over time. Be persistent or be intrusive and don't get discouraged. So we have steps on the slides about how to import your survey, but what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to show you how to do it, but right now I'm just going to turn to, I don't see any questions. I know there's been a lot of interaction in the chat, which is great. I'm not able to read it right now, but I will read it later. I love going back to read what's happening in the chat. And thank you so much to everyone for sharing these great teaching ideas. I love it. Okay, so let's take a look in Canvas. I'm going to show you how to import that survey. We did this in our last session by using Commons. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Commons in the far left column right here. Oops. Shoot. I'm glad I did that because it shows you, I do it all the time. If you click Control on your keyboard, and then click Commons, you can open it in a new tab and Canvas doesn't go away. I wish they would change that. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that way. And then once you're in Commons, type in our acronym for our series, FIHOT, FIHOT. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a Getting to Know You survey that was imported by Mike Smedshammer over at Modesto Junior College. I'm going to click there and then select Import and type the name of my course that I want to import it into and click Import into Course. Now I'm going to come back over to the course. I'm going to go to the quizzes area because Canvas surveys come in as quizzes. And if I'm doing anything wrong, or if I could do something better, Helen, Cheryl.
You're doing great.
Let me know because I don't consider myself a Canvas expert. Okay, so there's my Getting to Know You survey. It came right into the quizzes area under a heading surveys. The next thing I want to do is add it to a module. So I'm going to click on modules over in the left. I already have a module set up that I call Module 0 Getting Started, and I've got an overview page in there. If you don't have one yet, you can create a module simply by clicking on plus module over in the right and get that set up. Once you've got your module there and you know where you want your Getting to Know You survey to go, you click on this little plus over on the right side of Module 0 and toggle the top drop-down menu to quiz. Select Getting to Know You survey. You can indent or not indent or do that later and select Add Item. Diane, this is being recorded, so you can always go back and watch it. But when we get to our rooms in a little bit, we can drill into other steps if you need to see something again. So the survey is there now. And once you publish the survey and the module and your course, of course, students will be able to go in and take the survey. So now I'm going to toggle over to another course where I have the survey and some test students. These are not obviously real people, and show you how to see the results. If you set it up as a graded survey, you're going to see the points appear, whatever the points are that you attributed to that survey. And I'm going to click on one of the points and then click on that little arrow next to it. And that's going to pop up the column view of the speed grader. Now, what I do is do a right click and open the speed grader. I'm sorry, right click or control click and click on speed grader. That opens in a new window. And now I can actually, up here in the upper right, I see the student's name and it allows me to click from student to student. You see that? Okay, so I know I have 2 students that have responded. So this is Stephen's response, and I can just scroll through and see Stephen's responses and read through them. So here, Stephen has said that video feedback is fine. He's letting me know that he'll probably be using his phone a lot because he accesses course on breaks at work. That's something that I'd probably want to make a note of in the notebook, in the grade books. Let me show you how I do that. I go back over to the grade book, and in the top left corner, whoops, where is it? Click on, is it view? Yeah, it's view. And then under columns, there's an option for notes. So view and then notes. And a notes column pops up. And I can type in here using phone, just something really short like that. So I remember that in case there's some conflict with him not figuring out how to do something, right? The interface on the phone is not always, but it can be different from the computer. So I'm going to scan through these questions some more. I also see that he's nervous, right? So I can copy that and go back here real quick. I like to put that word up front when I'm taking notes so that it's the first thing I see in the notes column. And I usually don't make note about students who say they're fine or they're excited because I'm looking for high opportunity students. That's how I remember. Like if it's not one of those things, then I don't put it there. And here I've asked, what is one thing that is most likely to interfere with your success in this class? And this student has shared, I live with my mom. She's lost her job because of COVID. I've had to pick up a lot of extra hours at work. So that's something also that I'd want to make a note about here. And this last question here, what are your aspirations in life? It allows us to get to know our students, and have them share things that they're excited about, that are positive in their life, these kinds of affirmations, which are really important to include. And when I added this question, it helped me to have so many more meaningful interactions with students and also to have a better picture of who it is that's in my class. And so what I would do at this point is leave a response to Stephen. Since I am identifying him as a high opportunity student, I would click on the media comment and I would record a video response using my webcam. And that would appear in the comments area for Stephen. Yeah, so that's how that works. There's another way to get to your students' responses also that I'm going to show you. Let me go back here to the course, and it would be by going into the quizzes area, or you can get to it different ways, but you want to actually open the survey and remind me, is it survey statistics?
Which are you trying to get to the CSV or just see the results?
CSV.
Yeah.
Survey statistics.
And then student analysis.
This is not intuitive, I know. Student analysis. And
it will automatically download to your device.
Yeah, so just downloaded a CSV file, which is a spreadsheet file, to my computer. Helen, what else should I show here before we move forward? Or should we just move forward?
I think you're good.
Okay.
I mean, you can show them where if they just want to see the results.
And that would be...
You go into the survey itself from the quizzes area. So here, and then in the you're there, 3 dots, show student survey results.
Right.
And you see who's taken it and who hasn't yet. And when you click their name, you'll then also see their results. So that's just another way to get there.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Helen. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to give you about 15 minutes.
This video shows how to...
These are our steps that we have to help you. Remember, our slides are really helpful and they will support you in what...
This video shows how to find...
Stop talking, Michelle.
Getting to know you, sir.
Stop talking, Helen. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We have this structured a little bit differently for our engaged time. We're going to take 20 minutes now. We're going to come back at 11:45. If you need extra support using Canvas, you're going to stay right here, and Helen's going to be your guide. If you feel that you're very comfortable using Canvas, you're going to leave this meeting and click on the link for Cheryl's room, which Helen is going to put in the chat. If you're enrolled in this course to earn a digital badge and you'd like to meet with your cohorts and me, you're going to leave this room and go to my room. If you prefer a quiet place to work on your own, you can stay here and mute your speakers because they're most likely will be talking, or you can leave the session and come back at 11:45. Everyone have that? Okay, I'm going to leave that there for a minute. And then I myself am going to leave.
And what would you like the interpreter to do?
Follow the person, follow Maria.
I don't know who.
It's
Oh.
Maria. Maria, maybe ask Maria which room she plans to go to.
I don't know who she is. I don't know where she's at.
She's viewing. Okay, let me.
Could you prompt Maria to
Yeah, I'm going to try to find her in the chat.
Or maybe the interpreter could send that message.
And Michelle, can you let me know, or can you move me over into the host role so we don't get moved out?
Let me do that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going
to start the recording.
Okay.
Somebody just did. Good.
Thanks.
All right. Is there a way to aggregate data from the Canvas survey, like you can with SurveyMonkey or Google? And I think the student analysis button is probably which you showed earlier, but go ahead.
So first of all, really the only way to aggregate data from the qualitative questions is to look for themes and analyze them. But if you're doing a lot of the multiple choice questions, yeah, I don't know the answer to that other than what Helen said, looking at the survey statistics in Canvas. Haven't used it in that way.
Okay, great. Do you get a high percentage of students actually viewing your video response? Do you need to incentivize that somehow?
So I don't track that, but what I do is that I leave another prompt saying, hey, I left you a video comment above, so that I'm sure that that notification goes out nice and clear to my students. Yeah, so I use the media comments, and I don't even believe, and Helen, I don't think there's a way to know if students viewed those, is there?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think there was. But what I like to do is ask my students a question at the end of the video, and so I'll say what I want to say, and then I'll say something like, I hope that's been really helpful to you. And if it has, I'd really appreciate if you come back and leave me a comment right here on this page, because they're watching it in the context of the page. And I often do have students who come back and do that. But I don't police them. I don't no, I share it with them, and I'm hopeful that it resonates and does good on their end.
Okay, these are wonderful practices. I'm wondering if you have any practical suggestions for instructors who teach really large, 50 or more, so they end up having a total of 250 students. What are ways to help manage that high touch practice with that load?
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry. Yeah, the more students we have, the more it is a barrier for high interaction teaching. That's absolutely true. And it helps us to recognize how things like efficiency go against the grain of things like equity. And first of all, call that out, make that clear. Yeah, so I just want to say that. And it pains me when I see online classes actually having higher enrollments, because I know that this is more needed online, right? So the best I can say is that you are the best one to determine what you're capable of, right? You are the best one to know what you're capable of. And like we talked about earlier, that's going to change day to day. So whatever you can handle in that first week, and maybe that there are particular classes that you teach that are more intense, right? That need more of this type of interaction. I mean, maybe that's a way you want to kind of start triaging your courses. But I think that it's just important for you to make a line and know that, like, what am I capable of doing? And that's what you're going to contribute. And whatever you can give That's what you should feel good about.
Thank you. How do I pose questions from an asset-based perspective rather than from a deficit-based framing?
Whew, it's a good question. Who wants to answer that? Is there anyone who wants to answer that? Because it's such a good question and I'm having a hard time coming up with a clear answer.
So the question again, for now that we're asking to crowdsource an answer, the question again is, what are ideas, what are ways to pose questions from an asset-based perspective rather than a deficit-based framing? And we do have the raised hand feature open now. So if you want to share a response, you can click raised hands and we'll let you unmute.
So I'll tell you, I think anytime we can avoid, I guess, focusing on problems, you know, we use the word challenge in one of the questions, which I have often kind of sat with and struggled and thought, is that too deficit based? But I don't think it is, because I get really meaningful comments to that. Yeah, it's a really good question.
And there are two people with raised hands.
Oh.
I don't know if they had them up before or if they would like to respond, but can you see the list?
Yeah, I can now that I have that
Okay.
open. So do any of either Geeta, Layla, or Julie put in the chat if you have a response to that question? Just say I do and put it in the chat. Okay, Geeta does. Great. I will give you the mic. Geeta, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So instead of saying what is and how do you, I would reframe the question as tell me about. So I think that would, you know, it would be like more of a conversation than and me asking them a question, you know, what is and how, like.
Yeah, and it kind of shifts it to more of an invitation, like
Right.
creating a space for students to share with you.
Right,
That's a helpful little tip.
a two-way street, you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, sure, Victor. So deficit-based, and this is something that we unpacked in an earlier session. When we think about our students as the reason for for problems, right? So we put the burden on our students in terms of like thinking about our students as underprepared versus prepared differently. That would be an example of deficit-based versus asset-based. When we look at equity gaps in our classes and we see that our Black students and our Hispanic students and our Indigenous and other students of color perform at lower rates, to turn around and have the perception that, well, they're just not as good as our other students. In contrast to that, to look out at our students and see opportunity and potential in everyone and understand that what we do influences the degree to which students can achieve what they're capable of. So I hope that that's kind of an example. When we approach teaching from a paradigm of equality and think I'm going to treat all my students the same and that's the fair thing to do, which is right where I started in this journey of teaching, that sets up deficit-based thinking, because we expect everyone to be able to do the same with the same. And that's not true, because we know that our students bring different kinds of barriers and privileges into an environment. So I hope that helps a little bit to unpack those terms for you. And thank you for asking. And Layla has a suggestion here for my follow-up to the question about challenges. So the question was, what challenges do you think might interfere with your success in this course? Layla has suggested, what concrete strategies have you been using to be successful in your courses? I think that that's helpful, but I think it also kind of puts the onus back on the student too, right? In terms of it's all on the student. And part of the cues here is that it's like, we know that what we do really matters too. So I don't know, maybe I'll think about that one a little bit more. Michelle is asking for the course link. I'm not sure what course link you're looking for.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either, so I didn't know how to
I
respond.
think it was the your Fi-Hot Canvas course. I pasted it before. Let me grab it.
Well,
It's only available to those who signed
Yeah.
up for the digital cohort, and I don't think Michelle's in that. Miss you, Michelle.
that's it for the questions.
Okay.
And Patricia, I apologize for not seeing your request to demo how to find the survey responses when we were in our little breakout room. It wasn't in the chat. Yeah.
Sorry, Helen. We have 2 minutes left, so I gave Julie Ann the mic so that she can ask her question. If you still have one.
I didn't have a question. I was just going to share.
Okay, well, go for it.
2 minutes. Okay. So I just went through and I looked at the survey I had, and I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't very friendly. So I just made it more friendly. Like, I'm so glad you're here. How did you hear about Sierra College? And then I put pictures so that, because I teach ESL, so I thought that'd be a great thing to add for each question. And then, so I just tried to go through there and just make it more fun and just more friendly and less intimidating. So that's what I wanted to share.
That's wonderful. Michelle Coder, so the question is that, yeah, you're looking for the survey template. So from Canvas, click on Commons in the far left global navigation menu, click on Commons. From Commons, search for FIHOT, which stands for Fall into Humanized Online Teaching. Once you enter FIHOT, you'll see like 5 results. One of them is the Getting to Know You survey. You're welcome. All right, folks, we are at time. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy the breakout rooms worked. I'm not sweating bullets this time. Thank you to Cheryl and Helen and Stacy for supporting me today. And Matthew, thank you for being here to serve as our interpreter. And thank you all for just making time and bringing so much to support our students. So for those of you who are in the Fi-Hot course, this assignment is now available to you in that course, and you'll find more support materials there too. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time, hopefully.